let's talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is also one of the most common mental disorder, especially for those who have experienced a traumatic experience wherein there is a life-death situation or sexual abuse or even physical injuries. Okay, so someone who have history of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, from strangers, from relatives, from someone they know, which is very common. Okay, most of the abuse comes from the people that victim knows. Okay, so aside from that, there are actually different criterias that you should consider if we are talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, or what we call PTSD. Okay, so it must be more than 1 month since the incident happened. So what happens when someone have experienced this traumatic event in their life? Especially if it happened during their childhood, it actually affects them and it can be a life-changing event. We will base this criteria from the DSM-5, again, Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Okay? So, what are the criterias? I actually have the acronym for that. It's DINAA. Okay? D is for direct exposure. So, you can also have, aside from direct exposure, witnessing in person. So, dapat nandun ka when it happened. You may also have learned this event happening from your close relatives or family or close friends. And it may be very violent or an accident that really affects you emotionally, psychologically. And then aside from that, of course, it can also be an exposure from your work. Like for example, from a police officer who have witnessed different kinds of child abuse, or those who have been the first person who have to collect remains or evidence from those who have died of different causes, like or even accidents or murder, for example. It must not be from any screen like social media, television, unless it's part of your work. Okay. Next criteria would be intrusive thoughts. Okay, you can experience flashbacks of the event. Like for example, while I was talking or I'm conversing with someone, and then that specific event just flashed back on my thoughts, and then I cannot continue talking to the person I'm talking presently, and I go back to the time that that incident happened, that traumatic incident happened. And there are times that someone can have blank stares, or they can be very non-conversant or non-coherent already. You cannot talk to them logically. They can have that at times feeling of anxiety during the conversation because they remembered what happened. Okay, for students who have experienced that kind of trauma, they can have difficulty concentrating during the class, or even if that person or that student would be a very very active in school, and then you notice so that person actually have flunk grades, or have difficulty concentrating, or not interested in her school or any activities in school anymore. Okay, okay, so flashbacks of event or the emotions. Okay, it may be thoughts or even emotions that flashes back, or intrusive thoughts that you cannot control, remembering about that specific traumatic incident or event. Okay, next would be negative emotions. Okay, persistent negative emotions. You already cannot experience happiness since the day of that traumatic event. You always feel sad. You always feel that you should not be happy because you may experience that kind of event again, especially if that event happened in the most happiest day of your life, birthday, celebration, wedding, for example. Okay? You avoid that scenario. You avoid that kind of emotions of happiness because you are afraid you may experience again that kind of uh, feeling of being afraid or emotionally sad, or you have that mixed emotions of negative emotions. Okay, so next would be avoidance. You avoid usually the person the who have done that to you, who has done that to you, or the people who gives you memories of the past event, or the places, or even the date. Okay, there are times that patients who have experienced trauma when the month of the event, when the event happened on that month, they usually become anxious before that month, or they're very irritable during the month that that um, event or traumatic event happened. Okay, next would be, of course, arousal. Okay, it can be anger outbursts, no? They feel they have to express their anger, or at times, after they remember that traumatic event, they become very angry even though they're very silent. Okay? Or they're very sensitive to sounds. They may startle or they become hyper vigilant. They always look around, see if who's not trustworthy, or you become very suspicious of your environment because you always feel you're not safe. So it happens, and it affects your relationship, your family relationship, your romantic relationship, your work or school. Okay? It must not be related to any medical conditions. And other mental disorders should also be ruled out before we consider post-traumatic stress disorder. So, for those people who think it's just only an incident that happened and it's already part of the past, but if it's a traumatic event, it may last a lifetime. That's why someone who have experienced it during early childhood years, it can also be poor prognosis, especially if there's poor family support, and then the environment is very demanding or not safe for the victim, or they feel that they're not understood, or they are invalidated when it comes to what they feel. Okay, how do we treat those who have post-traumatic stress disorder? Of course, if there is depression, anxiety, we treat those. But for those who have experienced trauma, it's really helpful for them to process those traumatic experience. So they have to acknowledge what happened and to also grieve because of what had happened. Most of them actually blame themselves because they feel that they're the one responsible, because what happened to them, they deserve it. Usually, those who have done it to them blame them, or accuse them of being the one who made them do what they have done, okay, before, something like that. Especially if it's close relatives or someone they know, okay. So you can actually see the difference of someone who have experienced trauma from those who haven't. You have to be more observant with the behavior. Like, for example, that person or that child is very jolly, and then now that child becomes very silent, doesn't want to interact. So there's a difference of the behavior, and that child becomes very angry most of the time. Before, she's very silent, she's very open to what she feels, to what she thinks, but now she doesn't want to share it with you. Okay, so always be observant to the people around you, especially to your loved ones. because PTSD is very common nowadays, and because they're very aloof to the crowd. They don't want to talk about the trauma. They feel they are ashamed. They blame themselves. And though, at times, di ba, depression is can be part of it. PTSD and depression, and that anger to other people turn inward. So they are very angry towards themselves. Okay, so seek professional help, especially if you think someone or you have experienced PTSD. Okay, that person, that psychiatrist or psychologist can help you. And for those who have medical conditions, of course, we have to rule it out as well. Okay, so I hope you have learned from this video. Keep safe. God bless.